At the Nags Head Town Hall, just outside on the lawn, sits a shipwreck. The wreck was first spotted in 1975, uncovering itself on the beach a mile south of Whalebone Junction. In 1978, during a storm, the wreck was dislodged and drifted north to Jeanette's Pier, where it battered pilings, destroying 9, until finally washing ashore. Subsequently, with the help of multiple agencies, the wreck was moved to where it lies now. Since then, the shipwreck has been researched in great detail by archaeologist Nathan Richards from East Carolina University.
So we started to study the Nags Head wreck because it's sitting there, and it's not very often you see a shipwreck in a parking lot. And being an educator in relation to maritime archaeology and maritime history, and working at UNC Coastal Studies Institute and with East Carolina University, it's a great opportunity for my students to see how a ship of this era is constructed without having to put their scuba gear on. It's also very interesting because it had an identity. As we looked into this, sort of in the process of doing reconnaissance on a range of different shipwrecks up and down the coast, it became pretty clear that there's a lot of potential candidates that it could be. It's pretty clear it's not the Francis E. Waters, which is the name it got stuck with. And so it's a bit of a mystery story, and then archaeologists like to use their detective skills and thinking about all the different evidence that we can collate in order to come to our conclusions. And of course, even having the mystery is really important and really interesting to me, because it is the graveyard of the Atlantic, and we like to think we know all the wrecks. There's thousands of shipwrecks, there's probably over 5,000, maybe 6,000, but we don't really know. So it's a continuing sort of interesting story about the past coming back and visiting the beach. So if you deconstruct the history of the wreck from the records that we know, and this is predominantly from the underwater archaeology branch's site files, the wreck showing up in the 1970s, and it's a bigger wreck than the piece that we see today. So over time, it's broken apart during the wrecking event, and then it's continued to sort of come to pieces until it's placed in the parking lot in the front of the town hall. So trying to convey that information to the public is really interesting. A few years ago, a student at ECU, David Butaro, a master's student, he did a reconstruction project on this. And that was really illuminating because it doubled down on this idea that it can't be the Francis E. Waters. The Francis E. Waters is a 149-ton vessel, whereas the timbers suggest something much larger, something in the range of 1,200 to 1,500 tons. And so right now we're pursuing a project to look at its current state of preservation and to see if we can perhaps do some time-lapse measurement. And our hope is that that's also going to let us re-examine the way that that vessel was constructed and draw us back into the historical record. And so while we're not setting ourselves the goal of definitively identifying the wreck, we're hoping that future study might inadvertently identify the wreck. And that's really exciting for me, because then you have the opportunity to open a whole new chapter, sort of the story of the wreck. It might be a surprising vessel. It might be a vessel with a very rich history, and invariably, whatever it is, it's still part of Outer Banks maritime history. So we're planning on doing this over the next 12 months, planning a project, and then starting to do some three-dimensional modeling of the site to help us fulfill these aims. As an archaeologist, I'm interested in the preservation of these kinds of sites, really anywhere. And so we see this having experimental potential. What can we learn about the state of preservation of this vessel? Can we help stabilize it, or can we come to decisions about its future? That will hopefully have some bearing on the future of the Nags Head wreck, but we could learn some things that we could extrapolate and infer onto other wrecks, whether it's another wreck somewhere sitting in a similar situation, whether it's a wreck about to be pulled out of the beach for some reason, and we can learn from the history of what's happened to the Nags Head wreck. So there's layers of reasons to care about it, I think.